And as we dive into this, it's the spiral continues. The St. Louis Cardinals, all I can say is, they're in Detroit the last couple of days to play the Tigers, a last place team, by the way, a team that you should just absolutely roll over, and they get swept by the Tigers. Not so much because the pitching was poor, not so much because the offense was bad. It's kind of a combination of both. I mean, Johan Oviedo blew up the other night, and today John Gant didn't go more than 3 innings. So, the pitching woes are there. But when it comes down to it, an offense that gets you 4 runs over the course of two days against the last place Detroit Tigers team, my mind is just absolutely blown as to how poor this team is playing this year. And if you listen to Mike Shilt's post-game comments, he basically came out and said, tomorrow, you're going to see some really big surprises in the lineup. And I want to get to that in a second. I just want to get your reactions from the last couple of games, and then we'll dive into what surprises may be in store tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no part of this team that's playing well right now. You're not pitching well. You're not playing defense well. The offense is just anemic. I mean, it's hard to watch. It's painful to watch. When your starting pitchers can't get through 3 or 4 innings. I mean, we saw it yesterday. You talked about Oviedo. He was at 27 pitches going into the 4th inning, and then he throws almost 50 in the 4th inning. I mean, that just can't happen. And today with John Gant, I mean, he got through the first 2 innings. He walked 2 in the 2nd inning. Then at the top of the 3rd, the Cardinals come out. They get you 2 runs. Arenado hits a home run. Tommy Edman drives home a run. And then Gant comes out and walks the first 2 guys, to start that next inning. And the next thing you know, 1 hit, and they've got 3 runs, and, you're trailing again. So, it's just a snowball thing, man, because, the offense is just frustrated because the pitching has been so poor that I'm sure they feel like no matter what they do, their pitching is not going to support them. And the same thing with the defense. We've seen so much bad defense and so many errors, but so much of that too goes back to the pitching and the lack of the ability to throw strikes. These guys get back on their heels and are just bored out there because you're throwing 40 pitches an inning and 10 of them are strikes. And so everything is just completely out of whack, and this team doesn't even look like a major league ball club right now.
And we talked about it on Monday. This team has the worst walks per 9 inning of anybody in the league at almost 4.5 walks per 9 innings. And it's to your point. They can't seem to put anything together. And even when they do go out there and score runs and give your team a lead, the fact that you have guys that cannot get a clean inning. I mean, that's the worst thing to have happen is you go up and you score a couple runs and then your pitcher goes out and either walks a couple, gives up a couple of hits, doesn't have a clean half inning after that. And any momentum that you guys have gotten, it just goes away completely. And John Hefner is right. He goes, the worst thing about this is that everyone is losing and we can't catch up. It sucks. Like we're playing in a division where we're still like only 4.5, 5 games out of first place, and yet we're under 500 right now. It's so frustrating, and I want to get to this Mike Schilt stuff. What kind of changes are we potentially going to see tomorrow in the lineup that may shock people?
I don't think there's nothing that they can do with this lineup right now to shock people. What's a shock? I mean, there's nobody in the minor leagues right now that you can bring up and put in this lineup that's going to do anything. There's nobody on the bench that you can put in there and do something. What are you going to do? Have Arenado hit 8 and have, DeYoung hitting first and just, flip people. I mean, that's basically the only thing they can do because they have no other options right now.
I mean, you talked a little bit about it on Monday. Are maybe they going to put Dylan Carlson in the leadoff spot? Is that an entirely possibility that you slide him up there? Yes, it's one spot, but maybe you put Carlson up at the top of the lineup, and then maybe you put DeYoung in the 2 hole, get him in front of a guy like Arenado, because Arenado and Goldschmidt, they're doing enough right now to be like, okay, they're hitting, they're not producing a ton, but the guys in front of them can't get on. Maybe you slide a guy like DeYoung up into the 2 hole, put Carlson first, DeYoung second, keep Arenado and Goldschmidt there. Maybe that generates something, pitches for him to see, then maybe they get on base, or maybe you give a Carlson on base and Dion can bring him. I mean, like you said, I don't know what they can do that would really shake up this lineup and make people go, oh crap, I got to start producing.
Yeah, I mean, because you can't really, that's what people are saying. Oh, Paul DeJong doesn't need to be playing right now. You need to put him on the bench. Okay, let's put Paul DeJong on the bench. Who's playing shortstop? Have you seen what Amundo Sosa's doing offensively? He's not hitting it all now. I mean, his average has fallen like 150 points in the last 2 weeks. I mean, you can't do that. Yachty's struggling, but you can't put Andrew Kisner in there because Kisner's barely hitting 200 and hasn't hit, since like the first week of the season. So that doesn't work. You're not going to take Arenado out because he's struggling and put Matt Carpenter in at third base. Well, I mean, Mike Schilt might, but normal people wouldn't do that. I mean, there's just nothing other than totally going out of the box, and maybe that's what you have to do. I'm going to give Brad Thompson some credit. I was listening to 101 today, and he came up with this idea, and he said, you know what? Maybe at this point, because he pretty much said it. He said, right now this team is bad. He's like, maybe you have to go down to the minor leagues and say, all right, we know you guys might not be completely ready, but Nolan Gorman, Matthew Liberatore, you're coming up for a couple of weeks. We're going to speed this process along, and we're going to see if you can put some life in this ball club. And other than doing something like that, because, I mean, let's face it, Lars Nootbaar not going to turn this team around, although he did have a triple today and did get an RBI yesterday on a sacrifice fly. But, I mean, he's not the bat that's going to make this offense all of a sudden turn around. If you bring up Nolan Gorman, does that light a fire under somebody? Does somebody go, okay, here comes this kid who's tearing it up in Double-A. Maybe you stick him in the lineup and maybe he provides a spark? Maybe. I mean, it could happen, but he could also really come up here and struggle like we saw Dylan Carlson early last year when he first came up. Same thing with Matthew Liberatore. Do you say, okay, kid, you're not coming up here to be the savior, but go out there and give us 5 solid innings every 5th day? Is that his reward? Because, he wanted to go to the Olympics. It doesn't look like the Cardinals are going to be able to let him do that. So do you say, okay, we're not going to let you go to the Olympics. We're going to keep you with the organization, but we are going to promote you. And instead of pitching for the United States, you're going to get your major league opportunity. Maybe something like that's what they've got to do, because going out there, every couple of days and throwing John Gant out there, and at this point, Johan Oviedo and Carlos Martinez, and expecting big results. It's just, I mean, it's insane at this point because we've seen what they are. They're not getting, this is what they are,
Well, and you also have guys like Zach Thompson down there as well that could potentially come up. I don't know. He's not been pitching great this year, but that might be another one of those just to shake up things. As Guy Benson, the Hawaii Blues fan, a fan of the show, and we're fans of him as well. So, hey, Guy, maybe that's something that shakes up. A guy like Jordan Walker is hitting down in the minors as well. And once again, it's not so much about, like you said, bringing them up to be the savior, but maybe it's just a matter of like the guys that are playing right now, like, we've got guys in the minors that we could say, screw it, the season's over, and bring these guys up and get a major league experience. Maybe it is just a game or a couple of games where you put them in there and say, this is what's coming. You can either go out there and play like you're supposed to, or we're just going to say, screw the season and bring these guys up. I mean, that might be a possibility.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at a guy like Nolan Gorman and, everybody says, well, he's never been in AAA. No, he hasn't. But, we've seen top prospects jump from AA straight to the major leagues lots of times. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have never played AAA baseball that come up here that are top prospects and produce pretty well. So, I mean, it's a scary prospect because you don't want to bury the kid, especially since they didn't have a season last year. But when you see what he's doing at Springfield and he's just absolutely tearing the cover off the ball, I mean, in a lot of ways, and, people have said this, there's not that big of a jump between AA and AAA. So, while he's probably not ready for the major leagues, maybe you do bring him up here for a week and see. And if he comes up here and does something, then maybe he stays. I mean, the famous quote in 1985, Whitey Herzog brought Vince Coleman up here and said, okay, kid, don't get comfortable because you're only here for a week. And Vince said, no, I'm not. I'm never going back down. And we know how that worked out. So maybe something like that does happen. You just never know. But, I mean, they've got to do something at this point. You can't just sit on your hands and say, okay, well, this is what we got, and, we're stuck. Because here's the thing, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but if this team struggles like this and they don't pitch and they don't hit, and you can see the frustration building on his face. I know I said he would never do this, but if this team doesn't show signs of, hey, we're going to get better, or hey, we're going to make moves to get better, how do we know that Nolan Arenado doesn't turn around at the end of the season and go, okay, the Cardinals made me the same promises that the Rockies did. They didn't try to help us win either, so I'm out of here.
It's a scary thing to think about, and it is something that has been gaining traction in circles, that it's possible. He gets the respect and the admiration of the fans that are here, so that is definitely a big part of it. But yeah, I mean, if the organization is going to say exactly what Colorado did and then not do anything about it, that's the thing. Mozeliak even said last week that changes were coming, and we haven't seen it. Now, I know you look at it and you can't just snap your fingers and a change happens. There have to be dance partners, though all that has to find a spot and make it work. But if you're not actively going out there and trying to find things to happen, you're not going to find a dance partner. I mean, you could go out there and you could talk to Washington and say, hey, look, maybe we do have to pay a little bit of a higher price to bring in a Max Scherzer, or hey, let's talk to Minnesota about Barrios or what have you. If you're not going out there and talking, you're just waiting for them to come to you and say, hey, you look like you could need help. You look like you need help. Let's find a trade that works for us. If you're not going out there and trying to fix it on your end, you're not doing anything to improve your team. And that's what Nolan Arenado dealt with in Colorado. It's kind of been the MO here in St. Louis as well. I'm not saying that Mozeliak and them haven't made improvements to this team or tried to make improvements. Like you said on Monday, they went out and they got Ozuna. They went out and got Goldschmidt. They went out and got Nolan Arenado. But it feels like with this organization, it's like a one and done kind of thing. It's, okay, we're going to go after this one guy. And once we get him, here we go. You have to build on a couple of different pieces. Look, just go back to 2011. That's the huge part. 2011. How many moves did they make in that 2011 season that got them to where they needed to be in the postseason? They made a bunch. And I mean, the big one was the Toronto move for sure, but they made a bunch of other moves. This Cardinals team, as of late, they make one move and they think that's it. And then they rely on their quote unquote depth that they do have a lot of, but it's a lot of young guys that haven't had the experience yet. So I don't know. It's getting frustrating. I can tell you that for sure.
No, it really is. And you brought up 2011. I mean, you go back and look at what the Cardinals have done, in the off season is one thing, and then you look at what they've done at the trade deadline, and you're right. 2011, they made the big Colby Rasmus move, brought in all those pitchers. Other than that, under John Mozeliak's watch, you can look at 2013. That was the year they went out and got John Lackey and Justin Masterson when their pitching staff was struggling. And that team went back to the World Series in 2013. And the only other year that you can really look at with Mozeliak as the GM and say they made big moves at the trade deadline was 2009. And you look at that year, they went and got Mark DeRosa, then they went and got Matt Holliday, and then they topped it off by going out and getting John Smoltz. And that team made the playoffs and made a pretty good run. So they did what they needed to do to make that team better and to win. And I really thought that's what they would do when they went and got Nolan Arenado. You brought Wainwright back, you brought Yachty back, you go get Arenado. How do you get to this point and be like, well, okay, well, we did that. The team's not doing real well, so, there's always next year. It doesn't make any sense. Mozeliak's talked out of both sides of his mouth. A couple of weeks ago, like you said, he was, changes are going to come soon and we're going to have to make moves and do stuff. And then you hear him this week and he's like, well, there's really no pressure on this year for us to win. We're not going to mortgage our future. We don't feel any pressure to have to win this year. It's like, wait a minute. You just told the fans that there was pressure a week ago and that changes were coming. And now you totally switched and are saying, oh, well, we're not feeling any pressure to do anything. And then they wonder why the fans are upset.
Yeah, it's exactly a great point. And Guy also has this question, or not a question. He says the statement, Schilt doesn't last until the All-Star break. Is that a move that they would make just to maybe say they could make a move? I mean, it's not like Schilt's had no success. I mean, this team has won games, but is the axe going to fall on the manager because that's the easy way out?
No, because they did that 2 years ago. They did their in 18, 3 years ago, with Matheny at the trade at the All-Star break. And that did light a fire under the team when they brought Schilt in, and they almost made the postseason that year. I don't think it's going to happen because if you look at this team under Mike Schilt, they've been a second half team. Look what they did in 2019. They were about this point in 19, and then the second half they just were on fire, and they made that run. In 18, like I said, after he got hired, they went on that run in the second half of the season and got really close to making the postseason last year. And even last year, the last 20 or 30 games was where they really turned it on. I mean, I know they only played, 58 games last year, but, the last 25 games plus is when that team really turned it on and made that postseason push. So I think because of that track record of them being a better second half team, and that even goes back to the Tony La Russa days. If you look at the years when Tony was here, that team was a way better ball club the second half of the season every year than they were the first half. So I think because of that, they don't. I think Schilt is going to make it through this season. And, this team still does have the talent. As frustrated as I am, and as I know everybody is, there is enough talent on this team that they can be in contention. They definitely need to add a piece. You have to go get a starting pitcher and probably a bench bat. But when you bring back Jack Flaherty and you get Harrison Bader back, and, that's a piece that nobody wants to talk about. But not having Harrison Bader is huge for this team because it screws up your defense. Tommy Edmonds in the outfield instead of second base. Your center field defense isn't as good. So when you get Bader back, you get Flaherty back, you get Jordan Hicks back, who nobody even talks about. He's probably going to be back the end of July, first part of August. That would be a huge piece to that bullpen. And then if you get Flaherty back, if you're somehow able to get Miles Michaelis back, which I'm not holding my breath on that one, but, you get a couple of those pieces and you add a piece, then you can move John Gant back to the bullpen. And all of a sudden, this is a totally different looking ball club. So, I mean, I'm not giving up on them, but they definitely need to do some things to try to light a spark under this team right now. And then, hopefully get healthy and make a move or two in the next month. And I think they can win this division. And I think they still can go deep in the playoffs. Honestly, I really do.
I'm right there with you. I'm not losing hope, but it is getting to the point now where maybe I'm watching a soccer game as opposed to watching a Cardinals game because I kind of will know how a Cardinals game is going to end. Another team going in the area, in the Midwest area, it's going on in action right now. The Royals are playing the Yankees in New York. It's the top of the ninth. The Yankees lead 4-3. Carlos Santana hit a go-ahead home run in the top of the eighth for the Royals. Rougned Odor hit a two-run shot in the bottom of the eighth to give the Yankees a 4-3 lead. There's one out in the top of the ninth right now. Aroldis Chapman on the mound for the Yankees. And another piece that we got to talk about when it comes to Major League Baseball, and this is one I know you are probably pretty hot under the collar about, and it's because we saw pretty much the worst use of it last night with Max Scherzer and Joe Girardi. It's these new Major League Baseball rules, quote unquote, about pitchers being checked. The on-field exams began on Monday. Last night was the most egregious of them all. Max Scherzer was checked 3 times during the game. Joe Girardi and the Phillies thought there was something in his hair. He kept going to it, something he does. So it's not like it was something out of the ordinary for Max, but he kept going to his hair. They kept checking him. And basically by the time the third check happened, he tossed his glove and hat on the ground. He unbuckled his pants and kept saying, "I've got nothing." And he wasn't the only guy to unbuckle his pants on Tuesday night. Sergio Romo did the same thing. He unbuckled them and dropped trow, a la Steve Lyons, on TV. And it kind of begs the question, should the TV cameras be showing these checks, first of all? And B, just let it out. Tell me your feelings and your thoughts on these on-field examinations.
I mean, I understand why they're doing it, but how did you not? I mean, you knew that spin rates were out of control. You knew that pitchers were doing this. How do you decide in the middle of the season that all of a sudden, hey, we're going to enforce this? That's just ridiculous. And to not talk to the players about how you're going to do it or what you're going to do. Rob Manfred just comes out and says, hey, we're going to start having the umpires check pitchers, and then completely disappears. You haven't heard any comments from Rob Manfred since he came up with that idea in the first place. And then to see what happened in Washington, and this was what everybody was worried about. There's going to be managers that take advantage of this, that try to throw off a pitcher's rhythm by having them checked. And that's all Joe Girardi was trying to do last night. There was no question. First of all, no pitcher is going to be dumb enough to cheat the first week that they're doing these checks because pitchers know that the umpires are going to be out there. So if you are dumb enough to cheat right now and get caught, you need to just take it, pack your bags and go home because you're too stupid to be in the major leagues. If you're doing it the first week they're doing checks. But what Girardi did was ridiculous. They had Scherzer's checked once. They checked his glove. They checked his hat. Then it was hot and humid. So, yeah, he was running his fingers through his hair. That's what Scherzer said. He was like, yeah, I was sweating. I was hot. I was sweating. I was wiping sweat off my hair. And for Girardi to say, well, I thought there was something peculiar because I've never seen Max go to his hair before. Really? Have you watched every time Max Scherzer's ever pitched to know whether or not he wipes the sweat off of his head? That's just Girardi. Like I said, the Phillies couldn't hit him, so they were trying to disrupt him and get him out of a rhythm and frustrate him. And, that's what everybody said. A lot of managers are going to try to take advantage of this, and that won't be the first or the last time you see that happen until Major League Baseball comes up with a new kind of guideline to keep that stuff from happening. And the Nationals were mad enough that, their general manager, Mike Rizzo, came out and called Joe Girardi a con artist today, said, just really ripped him on the radio. And, baseball needs to come down on Girardi because Girardi had a smile. You could tell when they interviewed him after the game that he was almost had that smile chuckle like, yeah, I got away with something here tonight. I was trying to screw Scherzer over. So you've got to come up with a better way to do this. The spin rate thing, like I said, the spider grip and all that stuff, yeah, you've got to get that out of the game because there's no need for it. There's absolutely no need for pitchers to be cheating that blatantly. But you've got to come up with a way, and you've got to come up with a way to allow pitchers to use something. If you're not going to let pitchers use rosin, like they always have, or a little bit of pine tar or whatever to get a better grip, then Major League Baseball needs to come up with a way to I can't talk, sorry. Major League Baseball needs to come out with a way to fix these balls themselves that everybody agrees on, pitchers and hitters, and before games, you come up with some kind of a little bit of a sticky tack to put on the balls. All the balls are exactly the same. Everybody has the exact same thing, and you do it that way. You can't take everything away from the pitcher to where they're not getting a grip at all now and then be like, okay, well, now guys are getting hurt because they're having to put more force on the ball to throw it, which we heard Tyler Glasnow talking about that he thinks that's how he got hurt last week or 2 weeks ago was because all of a sudden he couldn't get a grip because he couldn't put anything on the ball. And so he was having to put more force with his thumb and his forearm into the ball to get a grip to hold it to try to get the ball to move like he wanted it to. So you definitely have to come up with something that pitchers can use that everybody agrees on. And then after that, if they're using something beyond what the league's agreed on, what the Players Association has agreed on, then you suspend them. But you don't just do it in the middle of the season and not really have a plan and go, okay, we're taking away everything. That's just Rob Manfred. Like somebody said, I really don't think Rob Manfred likes baseball. With all these stupid rules and all these changes that he just tries to make, it's like he has never watched the game before and doesn't care about it and is just throwing stuff up against the wall, seeing what'll stick. And it's ridiculous.
I can see that. I really can. He's a guy that I don't know how much into baseball he was. I'm pretty sure he was Bud Selig's, lawyer or something to that effect, where it's more about the paperwork than it is about the actual game itself. And he actually did have some comments today about what's been going on. He was surprised, saying, "Oh, it's working wonderfully." The whole thing on Tuesday night with Washington, that was just a one-time thing. Everything else has been going smoothly. It's amazing how amazing it's been. He sounds like somebody else that we know that likes to talk about amazing things that actually aren't amazing, but we won't get into that. And speaking about Major League Baseball finding a way to kind of prevent managers from taking advantage of this. Well, Mike Matheny in Kansas City, he's already got a plan for what happens if a opposing manager decides to be like this. He's going to have his team respond. And whether that means throwing at the opponent or what have you, they're going to do that. And that's the other part of that is if Major League Baseball isn't going to police it, the teams themselves are going to police it. And then once again, now you're getting into injuries, you're getting into fights and things like that. Also on the fact of grip. How many guys have we seen over the last couple of years get hit with baseballs that get away, not intentionally thrown? I mean, even this year, we've had a couple of them. Bryce Harper, for example, got hit in the face with a baseball because a Cardinal player could not grip it. That's the whole thing. It's not, in a lot of these instances, it's not about them trying to gain an advantage. It's for them to try and protect the players that they're facing. And guys like Garrett Cole have even come out and said, like, hey, we want to figure out a way to make something universal, like you said, that everybody uses, and it's standard across the board. No more of this back bullpen, back dugout, back clubhouse concoction that you're getting. I mean, Adam Wainwright even went out and tried some stuff a couple of years ago. He came out and said and admitted it. He goes, I tried it. It wasn't for me, and I've moved on. But even when you get guys like an Adam Wainwright who are like, I need to find something that's going to give me a grip in order to help me control the ball, that's saying something right there. And if Major League Baseball can't not see that, then there's something fundamentally wrong with the league, and they need to find a way to change.
No, they absolutely do. Because anybody that's ever pitched, thrown a baseball will tell you how slick, especially a new baseball, can be trying to get a hold of it. Even pitching back in Legion and high school days, if you didn't have a little bit of dirt, a little bit of rosin, something on that ball, it was hard to get a grip on it. It just is. And so, to punish guys that are using dirt and pine tar and that kind of stuff that, that they've always used, a little bit of suntan lotion, that's not making the ball do anything really different. It's getting a grip. It's really not going to affect the spin on the ball or anything else. So, I mean, why take that away from pitchers? That it just doesn't make any sense. Going back to Garrett Cole, I don't have a whole lot of respect for anything that Garrett Cole says, because did you hear his press conference last week where they asked him if he'd ever used anything, and he said, I don't know how to answer that? Like, I mean, he was humming and hawing and stumbling all over. It's like, just come out and admit it, say, yeah, I did it, and now that the league is against it, I'm not going to use it anymore. That's all he had to do. Do what Wainwright did. Yeah, I tried it. I didn't like it. I'm not using it anymore. But Cole made himself look like an idiot during his conference. But, yeah, and there's still going to be pitchers that are going to try to come up with something. I mean, there's guys that are going to try to cheat no matter what you do. But, baseball's just got to come up with, like we said, with that thing that everybody agrees on. And then if pitchers get caught using anything else, then you suspend them for, a couple of weeks, a month, whatever, and you don't pay them. That was the other dumb thing. Okay, we're going to suspend you for 10 days, but you still get paid. Really? I mean, yeah, you're hurting their team because the team can't bring anybody up to take that roster spot. But are you really hurting some of those players? Because some of those pitchers that are doing that, they don't really care about the team. It's just about them and their money anyway. That's why they started doing it in the first place, to try to make more money when they became free agents. So, I mean, if you really want to stop it, that wasn't the right way to go about that either. And again, it just shows how half-assed this whole idea was.
For new episodes, merchandise, and behind-the-scenes content, be sure to visit ToastedSTL.com or follow us on Twitter at ToastedSt. I am the voice of the Blues, Tom Calhoun. Let's get toasted!